Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster
Mr.
Kings
Kings
Radio. And in today's episode, we'll be talking about PortAventura World. This is part of our Inside series, which we launched an episode a long time ago about Magic Mountain. What we did is we went into Six Flags Magic Mountain, did a grand old lap around the park, and talked about everything in its way. We're practically going to continue doing that, but we're going to do it on a more global scale. And we've been talking about PortAventura among ourselves for so long now, and we're excited to talk to you about it. So that's what we're practically doing today. A virtual tour, and we're going to discuss all the attractions along the way.
We talk about PortAventura a lot.
More than we should.
In September, we were there for quite some time. We gave ourselves a lot of time to really take it all in. So it's a pretty big resort. It's one of the few two park resorts out there, especially when you consider two park resorts that are not Disney. So there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to do. It's big, which is cool. I would start by saying that the bigness of it is definitely one of its better qualities.
Yeah, so quick background here. PortAventura designed by Tibidabo Group and Anheuser-Busch Group. And then by the time it opened in 1995, it was owned majority by the Tussauds Group, but also partially by Kaiha Group and Anheuser-Busch. Lots of Busch Gardens vibes, pretty much, because it was designed by Anheuser-Busch, obviously. Yeah. And then in 1998, the Tussauds Group sold the majority of the stakes to Universal, and then Universal rebranded the resort as Universal's PortAventura. In 2002, Universal invested more money into the resort and turning it into an actual resort. Previously, which is a theme park. As of 2002, they opened Costa Caribe, which is the water park, and the first two hotels, Hotel PortAventura and Hotel El Paso. And then they renamed the resort to Universal's Mediterranean, with Universal's PortAventura being the park within that resort. 2 years later, they dipped. They said, okay, 2004, we're out. We're going to sell every bit of interest that we have in PortAventura. And starting in 2005, the name was changed back to PortAventura, but spelled as one word versus two words because of licensing issues. And now, looking ahead, 19 more years, 2023, 7 hotels, 2 theme parks, and latest attendance figures of 2022 show 3.7 million guests. So there we are.
And that's just for PortAventura. It doesn't even count Ferrari-Land, does it?
No, that's for the whole resort.
So
that includes Costa Caribe,
okay.
PortAventura Park, and Ferrari-Land. But neither Costa Caribe nor Ferrari-Land draw that many visitors when you look at the overall balance, I don't think.
Yeah. It's definitely a resort dominated by one park with the tiny second park and the, fairly modest water park. And then I think the resort area with the whole hotels and stuff is actually one of the nicer aspects of the whole property. Where we were staying, we kind of walked from one end of the resort area to the other, to the resort entrance of the park. And I thought it was like the prettiest thing that the park had. It seemed really well maintained and detailed and cute. And it's just a really nice overall way to start or finish your day at the resort, by being on the resort area.
Yeah, I agree, because it's nicely linked to the far west. Well, most of the resorts, because we stayed at
the Coyote Creek.
The Colorado Creek, yes. We stayed at Colorado Creek.
I thought it was Coyote Creek.
No, definitely not. It's Colorado Creek, which is part of the far west hotel cluster over by Hotel Gold River and Lucy's Mansion, and that's all connected with the far west area.
Colorado. You're right.
I know.
Like, I know I'm right.
Anywho, that's where we stayed. And there's also resorts on the Mediterranean side, which is the first area we'll be talking about. So the main entrance to PortAventura is the Mediterranean area, which is home to, Furios Baco.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite roller coaster on resort.
Yeah. Certainly one of the most memorable experiences is your ride, for better or for worse. Your ride on Furios Baco will certainly be memorable. It's one of a now an increasingly rare breed of Intamin hydraulically launched coasters, and it's the only hydraulically launched wing coaster in the world. Intamin's really only product in this particular product line of coasters, where it's like a tried and true B&M style wing coaster, unlike some of the like hyper coasters and things like Sky Rush, for example, or Flying Aces that use a different kind of train system with like wing seats.
I will say it's going to become an apparent theme throughout the entire episode, but a big thing of PortAventura is that it's not maintaining its theming, it's not maintaining its landscaping, it's not very clean. And the first place you're going to see that is the Furios Baco pre-show. So before you launch, there is a pre-show. It uses the screens and several animatronics. None of the animatronics have worked in years. The moving door doesn't work.
It's just so sad.
All of it's not really working. Unfortunately, it's all the only thing that's still working is the TV screen, really.
In fact, wasn't it Andrew who said that there used to be like barn doors that opened?
Right. Yeah. So those were the doors I just mentioned.
And then those broke, and then they put like a basic rolling garage door type thing to replace it.
That broke, and they still didn't fix it.
So like even the Band-Aid broke.
Yeah.
For this
exactly.
ride. Like,
and it's kind of creepy because you're in the pre-show and you see all these animatronics just hanging there. They don't do anything, which kind of makes the story really awkward.
And then you just take off.
And they can just take off. Ride itself, it's one of those rides you're like, I can't believe they built this. It's so wild.
Definitely.
A little jackhammering, definitely in the wings.
I-305.
But I really feel like the reason I love it so much is because every time I get back to that breaker, I'm like, what the hell just happened? That's crazy. And that's the thing why I like the ride so much. And then about the queue is just an amazing amount of switchbacks. The ride is very popular and the capacity isn't great. So you have a giant vineyard outside that is a queue, and then you have a really big building that's all just switchbacks. Miserably hot in there no matter what time of day. Just a heads up, I would definitely recommend either rope dropping it or trying to get in line right before they close for the night, which you need to check when the ride closes because it closes early due to the fireworks show in the lagoon, Fiesta Aventura. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on Furios Baco.
Yeah. The rest of the area, this like Mediterranean area, it's kind of meant to be inspired by the immediate landscape of Barcelona. And it's cute. We had tapas at the main restaurant there, which was really enjoyable. The main hotel, the PortAventura Hotel, is sort of built in to the entrance plaza approach. When we were there, they had, like, decorations and stuff. They had, like, string lights, like Christmas lights and stuff hanging from everything. Don't they leave that stuff year-round?
Yeah, it looked a little tacky because it was clearly Christmas lights and it was September.
They have all this beautiful architecture here. And they throw string lights not only on, like, all of the buildings and stuff, like, throughout the park, but also on the parade floats for the parade that they run through this area of the park so that it can be a nighttime parade. Just like
really, it's just daytime floats with Christmas lights. It's kind of draped over, very cheap.
The nighttime show in the lagoon is pretty cool.
It was really cool. It's a holdover from the Universal days, but Fiesta Aventura is highlight of the night. Yeah. They have what are those waterboard thingies called again that you're on? Flyboards.
Waterboards.
Flyboards.
Not
waterboards coming out of the water. They have a bunch of floats,
hoverboard, like a water jetpack type things.
They have a bunch of floats that are coming and going depending on the scenes, and then all the scenes are related to the areas of the park. So there's like a Far West scene, a China scene, a Polynesian scene. It's actually quite nice. That's one of the highlights of the resort for sure. I love that show.
So unfortunately, like what we talked about with Furios Baco's pre-show being broken and disappointing and the queues being hot and uncomfortable and stuff being under-maintained is definitely the tone that continues throughout your experience. When you enter Mediterranean and you hang a right, you will continue to the Polynesia area of the park. And the signature attraction in Polynesia is Tutuki Splash, which is a massive shoot-the-chute ride with 2 drops. It's like one of the only scenic extended shoot-the-chute rides. If you were a fan of the tidal wave at Busch Gardens, Tampa, this was definitely a project inspired by that. This was also being built the same time that Escape from Pompeii was being built. So, like, Busch was really all in as far as, like, taking the standards, Intamin still water, shoot-the-chute rides, and, like, elevating them to, like, these major attractions that had unconventional layouts and landscaping and scenery. And even in the park map, even on the website, Tutuki Splash is, like, this massive attraction that garners a lot of attention. It's a big volcano, and like in the park map, it's got like this giant like King's Dominion sized looking volcano with like smoke billowing out of the top, and then you ride it.
Yeah, in reality, it's poorly maintained rockwork with 1,000,001 plastic bottles floating around the water. It's a very sad state of affairs for Tutuki Splash. From a distance, it looks cute, but like everything in PortAventura, the closer you get, the worse it gets.
Yeah,
and
those
it's just,
bottles.
honestly, just a giant... have you heard of that giant island of plastic in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that's like the size of France?
Yeah.
Imagine like a small version of that. It's just plastic trash all over the ride. It doesn't even resemble a volcano anymore. I can't even fathom that it ever was, because it looks like it's nothing but a empty shell with a flume through it. It's just so
sad, because like the turnaround at the top before the big drop, you're supposed to be at the mouth of the volcano, and it's supposed to be this like lagoon of sorts with effects and probably water features and stuff, and it's just this like abandoned, stagnant water. It's like cesspool. Like, it's gross, and it's not even just bad or poorly maintained, but it's like disgusting and probably a breeding ground for bugs and stuff. So it's just a pity. It's already our second example of a ride that was built really well at the very beginning and potentially exceeding its expectations and potential, and then just being left to rot and deteriorate.
I will say the area itself isn't terrible. There's a lot of live entertainment. The Bora Bora restaurant has amazing food. It's probably one of the best quick service restaurants we've encountered in Europe, I would say, for a theme
definitely.
park. So I've got to give them highlights, and there's a lot of entertainment. There's a major stage show that's outside. There's Polynesian dancing and all that kind of stuff that's inside of the Bora Bora restaurant. Just this year, they relaunched the Bora Bora restaurant with a whole new menu, which is pretty good because our correspondent Andre went there. So I'll consider it's not all bad in the area. The swinging ship is gorgeous, but Tutuki Splash, which is the highlight of the area, it could not be in a worse shape right now, to be honest with you. But let's move on from that. Let's head to Sesame Street.
Oh, yes. So an offshoot of Polynesia is Sesamo Adventura, which the kiddie area originally opened without an intellectual property attached to it and was a subsection of Polynesia. And the park's kiddie coaster, their little Vekoma roller skater, Tommy, yeah. Even though it's part of Sesame Street now, the kiddie coasters always had that same name. So it's like a Polynesian, jungly Sesame Street. At least at the beginning, the parts of it that are close to Polynesia kind of carry that theme, all the stuff that was repurposed. But as you continue into the area, it kind of transforms into some other stuff. Yeah, once you cross the
train tracks, literally, it's like a different theme.
Yeah. So, like, they've continued to expand on the Sesame Street theme, like with the Shooting Dark ride, Street Mission, Sesame Street, which is an excellent dark ride, a really enjoyable modern shooter that, like, the Q pre-show sequence with, like, the Grover animatronic and stuff was wonderful. But I guess it's easy for PortAventura to do something really well early on. But based on the trends that we've seen with other attractions and stuff built, it seems almost inevitable that the ride will deteriorate and be ill-maintained, and that they'll put Band-Aids on it like they did with some of the other attractions, and it'll just be a shadow of its former self. So I guess in one way we feel kind of lucky to have ridden it when it was new, because we actually get to ride it when it was good and well-intended.
Luckily it wasn't so new, so it is in a pretty decent shape. I think the licensing may have to do with that, because it's a licensed attraction, so at the end of the day...
Oh, remember the styrofoam on the side of the building? I think that was elsewhere in the area.
Like everywhere, though. The whole resort, it was like styrofoam. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was in...
Because that's one of the newer...
That's right, there was the Sesame area.
For the Sesame area.
The whole side of the building was just styrofoam, and if you bump your stroller against it, this like little white styrofoam bubbles would just like literally fall off. It was the wildest.
Yeah.
But I don't want to spend too much time in this area, because low-key there really isn't much to talk about besides that. That's pretty cute. I think what we should move on to next is China, which 3 major e-tickets.
Yeah.
I think we should start with
really
Encore, because nobody knows about it.
This is really the biggest area of the park by far. In fact, it was probably already the biggest when it opened, but they also had a lot of room to expand. And they've moved on not to just they've moved on to outside of China and into like Thailand and Cambodia for some of the expansions. But the original Chinese portion includes like a little Chinese village, and then the Great Wall, like a Beijing area as well, like a Forbidden City.
And Dragon Con is in a Forbidden City.
Yeah.
Which is obviously the B&M looper inspired by Kumba when it opened, most inversions in the world, 8 inversions, which is pretty sick. Was it as good as Kumba? Honestly, it wasn't as good as Kumba. It's a great ride, but Kumba has a sort of snappiness to it and a sort of flow in its layout with some really nice transitional moments. And of course, a final helix. To that degree, Dragon Con just felt like it was just inversion. I love a good inversion, but I felt like there was not even a single moment there was a transition. It was almost all just inversions.
Yeah.
Like, the transitions were the inversions, to the point where I almost kind of felt like I was missing something, despite literally having, 8 inversions in that layout. So I will say, though, that the queue is really gorgeous. The exit is really cool when you go through, like, Chinese garden. Station's cute. Like, the overall vibe of the ride is iconic, and it's nice, and I really appreciate it. Was the ride itself as good as I'd expect? No, I still find Hulk and Kumba the better rides.
Yeah, as Floridians, well, I guess as people who live in Orlando, I should say, we're really quite spoiled with 2 B&M sit-down loopers that just kill it in most capacities, and we were really excited for Dragon Con, and we were ready for Dragon Con to be our new favorite, and it just did not quite live up to the expectations. It was a little rougher than I was expecting. Did you agree?
Yeah, originally that was the ride I think we looked forward to the most. I think it wasn't quite what we expected.
It's definitely the one I was looking forward to the most, and it just felt a little short.
And before we forget, since we're on the China topic, I want to quickly run in there that there's a whole section of China that has these beautiful gardens and flat rides and stores, and it's really nice. And this restaurant that was closed during our visit. What is it? A Marco Polo restaurant that suddenly has reopened since. But then there's a whole riverfront area where there used to be a river boat ride, and that's really sad because it was gorgeous. There's a stage, and there used to be this boat ride that went all around the park, including through China. That's all just like abandoned. You can still walk over there, but it's really sad. Like broken rockwork, stagnant pools. It's really sad. If you want to have a close look at that, you can look at our PortAventura vlog on YouTube. Summit. Pretty much, yeah. But let's talk some more about coasters. Shambhala.
Yeah. So then behind Dragon Con, you have the Himalayas. You have Shambhala, which it's the silhouette of Shambhala is meant to represent the Himalayas. And this is an extremely well-loved roller coaster. People talk about this ride. People who traveled all over the world say it's a great ride. I found it enjoyable. It also suffered, I think, from the same, because I was ready for Dragon Con to be my favorite of its kind, and I had high hopes, high expectations for Shambhala. For us, the dispatch threshold was very tight, to the point where it made it like we were so snug in this ride that like it was harder to enjoy what was there on the coaster, and like obviously we're not the skinniest people in the world, but I also don't think we're the biggest. So, and we've heard of people either having trouble comfortably riding or even being able to ride at all, just because the dispatch threshold is so low. And like riding it is one thing, and being able to say like, oh, I rode it, I got the credit or whatever. But then like enjoying it is another thing entirely. And I was so distracted by how uncomfortable my rides were. I rode it twice, and both times it was like I was barely able to get out like of the station, and I just spent my whole ride like experiencing this discomfort and not really being able to focus on any other aspects of it.
I will say that Shambhala has this presence to it that even when you're really far away at the Kato Tarragona train station, for example, that you can see it looming in the distance. It definitely has kind of like a powerful, has a powerful presence in that park, which is really nice because, of course, Ferrari Land has Red Force, and both of them are the top 3 tallest coasters in Europe. But it just has this presence, which I find really cool because even at night, the trains have LEDs on them. So you see the train just kind of coasting through the darkness, through like the starry sky. I do think that presence-wise, it's a really cool ride. But then even the queue, really busy, just a bunch of switchbacks, and then there's just so much trash. So if you cross the bridge from the queue into the station, it's just bushes full of like hundreds of water bottles. I just can't believe how completely dirty this park is. Like, clean your shit up.
The water bottle thing is crazy. So there's this. The park is just inundated with these blue plastic water bottles because when you stay on resort, you get 2 free bottles of water from this company, and the bottles are like colored like this unnatural blue color.
In fact, the purpose is to reuse them,
and people bring them into the park and drink them, and then they just throw them everywhere. So there's like plastic blue bottles cascading down the plants around the Shambhala area, and like in the ponds, the water features, in the plants, just everywhere. And then the LED thing that you were talking about on the trains is actually not a decorative LED, but an LED floodlight for riders to purchase their a video of their onboard experience on a roller coaster, which sounds kind of cool, except for that it completely ruins night rides on these coasters. Shambhala and Furios Baco both have it. And like, we got Furios Baco rides at night that was just like riding a coaster with a flashlight in your face. And what would have been a really great nighttime ride experience was just totally marred by this goofy cash grab advent of a record yourself on a roller coaster at night thing. But those kinds of annoyances and disappointments just to start to become like really typical of your experience at PortAventura.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of other small stuff that we'll get into a little bit later, like operationally that make no sense to me. But we'll dive into in a little bit. I do want to mention before we move on to the next area, Encore, which is a splash battle. And this interactive area, of course, none of the water features off the ride can be used for free, so you better have money with you if you want to play any game. And then on ride, it's kind of like a mix of an outdoor dark ride with a bunch of scenes and a splash battle. But there is so much of the ride where you can't really splash each other that you're just kind of sitting there looking around or you can't reach the other boats, which is a bit of an awkward situation. I do like the ride because we rode it a bunch.
We had a good time.
We had a good time on it. It was the theming, well, horrendously maintained and all falling apart. It's more than I've ever seen in a splash battle. So, like, once upon a time, it really must have looked really nice.
Just PortAventura things.
Just PortAventura things.
Everything
they ruin a good thing.
Like, this must have looked great when it opened.
Yeah, so that's practically what it feels like over there. It feels very much that the company who operates it, it's just an investment for them. They're not a theme park management company historically. It feels like they just put a lot of short-term money into it to try and raise that value until they inevitably sell the park. But it just doesn't feel like it's loved. I just don't feel like anyone that owns the park is loving the place, is putting any love into it. It's just like cash cowing it. That's kind of the vibe I got after staying there for 4 full days, 4 nights. Like we did the full resort thing. Mm-hmm. We did it all, the pool, the bars, everything. So I feel like I'm justified to kind of say that I did not feel the love at any moment.
Yeah. Criticism that, we've spent a lot of time in China and doing theme parks in China. And the criticism of Chinese parks that's most common is that they seem to build things and then they just kind of let them deteriorate. And I would say maybe not quite to the same extreme extent as like a Happy Valley park, but there were ways that PortAventura reminded me of that a lot, because when they build something, they really just build it once, and it's built and it's done. And the way that it deteriorates or ages is just the way that it goes. And if various qualities and aspects of a ride deteriorate or disappear or just, fall off and tumble into the ocean, it's just like, well, we already got our money's worth. Like, their idea of maintaining a ride is like keeping it operational, but any of the little details and stuff that went into the ride when it was being developed, it's just irrelevant now because the ride's already open.
I will say that the bones from anything pre-current company are really good. Especially Universal put such high-quality money into the place that there is still infrastructure that feels like it has really good bones. That's the majority of the Mexico area. To a degree, even Furios Baco's queue and everything, because that was also contracted back in the Universal days. You just opened when they already dropped, the resort.
It feels like Busch Gardens Williamsburg, but like a 4 corners of the earth.
Yeah, there is still a lot that feels like it has very, very solid ground. But then everything that's new, it just feels like it's cheap, already falling apart, even if it's only a few years old, which is really unfortunate. I don't want to be too negative about the park because, it's an enjoyable place, but I just, like I said before, I just don't feel like it's as
frustrating.
loved.
It's a frustrating park.
So let's all head over to Mexico, which is the next on the loop. Mexico is home to a famous attraction like Temple de Fuego, which is kind of like a Poseidon's Fury attraction that we have here at Universal and the Resort, but then the fire version of it. And that's at PortAventura, of course. And you have Huracan Condor, which is a giant, intimate, second-generation drop tower with stand-up seats, stand-up floorless seats, and just sit-down seats, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
a sit-down tilting seat.
That's right, the sit-down tilting seats. And you have El Diablo, the big mine train, and a great collection of flat rides. Like, I think Mexico may be my favorite area. Forested. Everything there is from the pre-current management era, so everything is kind of like, the buildings aren't falling apart. The old buildings, they are starting to age beautifully in that sense. And I really like this area. I had a great time spending time here.
The drop tower is not quite it's not as well maintained as it could be, but it's not glaringly neglected the way that like Tutuki Splash is. It's got a really amazing presence. It just like really captures the eye. It's like a 300-foot tall drop tower.
Yeah,
it's a giga drop tower.
And the views of the Mediterranean are just
stunning,
spectacular.
We rode it several times because that was
one of my favorite rides there.
Riding it, we were like, this is one of the greatest drop towers in the world. Like, I just can't get enough of this thing. So we sampled a couple of different seating positions. Really enjoyed that ride. And then
and it takes a photo on top. Like, when you get to the top, it has those cameras that hang out and take a picture of you as you drop. And honestly, it's a really great photo location because we actually bought it. It was great.
I mean, it has a stunning presence because it's supposed to be like this supernatural beam of
that shot out of the earth and destroyed this temple.
Out the roof of a temple. So, like, it's just a visionary attraction that just screams Universal creative. Like, it's just so clear that this was like the last truly creative element in this park before new management took over and just started phoning everything in. And then I would also say, so El Diablo Tren de la Mina wound up being like my favorite coaster in the park because it felt like it had a great presence. It was well maintained. It exceeded my expectations. Beautifully landscaped, great interaction with other attractions. Just a strong overall ride.
Yeah, the layout is fantastic. It must be my favorite Aero Mine Train by far.
Definitely.
Long, great layout. It's really smooth. Speed doesn't really feel like it's repeating itself, which, it's honestly kind of a wonder that it's even possible on a mine train coaster because you feel like all of them kind of feel like they repeat themselves. But that was really great about it. Downside, though, of these aero trains is you have your 3 rows per car. Front row has legroom. Second row has less legroom. The last row has like practically no legroom. I don't know why they designed it like that. Probably because of the wheels. Just not great. And in typical PortAventura experience, they will absolutely not let you choose your row, even if you there's no way. They will not let you choose your row. They assign your row, and even if you're clearly the tallest person in the queue, if you sit in that back of a car and you can't fit, they don't care. That's what they assigned you. And that's kind of frustrating.
And the station could be empty.
The station was empty and we still couldn't pick a row. And that was the case on all the rides. And, I don't really care that much. We got lucky with Furios Baco being in the front and the back. We've got lucky here and there. And I generally don't care. But if it really comes down to like it being a seat where whether or not it physically fit in the ride or not, and they're just going to be like, oh, well, can't sit there. And I'm just kind of like, come on, guys, it hurts.
Like, there was a time, I really wanted to session Tren de la Mina. But every time we rode it, we were sort of rolling the dice. Like, are we going to get a row that's comfortable?
Or a row that's
Or are we going to get a row 3 of a car and the ride operators are going to be like, well, sorry, that's the way it is. Like, sucks to suck. Like, there's just... And I understand that they're just doing their job as it's told to them. But, God, like, what is it about the management in this park that is just so... they're so policy-driven on policies that don't even matter. Or at least policies that are not accomplishing what they think they're accomplishing at a huge price. So you want to be efficient, but at what cost? Like, when your ride has an empty station, like, why are you forcing people to sit in uncomfortable rows when you know this ride? This is your ride. You know that some rows have more leg room than others. You've got a 6'6" coaster enthusiast in your park, and it's like they're just so. These people have been told they have no choice but to follow this policy, and the policy is just so matter of fact and doesn't even seem to assist in the experience at all.
I do want to say that, like, obviously I respect policies and understand there's a reason for policies. It's when there's, situations like this that it's more frustrating to the visitor than it is. Because it wasn't just us. I've seen all these people be like, oh, can I please sit in the front row? Or like, my kid wants to sit in the back. And it was a no. But the whole station's empty. I'm like, let the kid sit in the back. Like, what is the big deal? And I get the policies are there for a reason, but it doesn't necessarily improve the experience is what I'm trying to get at.
Especially since their operations suck anyway. Their dispatches are still terrible, even when they're over here assigning rows and stuff. Like, Dragon Con, they fill the train, they get rows assigned, like, whatever. But then it still takes, like, 5 minutes for them to send the train. So it's like, there's really no part of some of these policies where there's success or some sort of gain from doing it.
And then Temple de Fuego, also in the area, really, really popular ride, attraction. Since COVID, it was seasonal, so we missed it, but it has since reopened again. So hopefully on our next visit, which I'm not that motivated to run right back to PortAventura, but on our next visit, I'm trying to get Temple de Fuego, because I was actually really looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
Let's go ahead and head on to Far West, by far the largest area in the park. It stretches practically like a third of the park. It's massive.
I thought China was biggest.
No, I think Far West is because it starts a little bit by the Mediterranean Harbor and goes all the way to Mexico where the hotels are.
It is quite big.
Because it has Grand Canyon, it has like the Silver River area.
It's definitely a big area.
It's almost like 3 sub-areas.
Especially if you consider the hotel.
Oh, the hotel cluster, yeah, for sure. Then it's half the resort.
Speaking of going back to PortAventura, if there was a reason to go back to PortAventura, like for us, it would be to check out the new Uncharted roller coaster. But I don't really, I would like to go, but I'm not, desperate to go.
So if you are curious about what Uncharted offers and how it's operating, just visit thecoasterkings.com. We've got a full review on the homepage of Uncharted. We were there at the opening. We were invited. We appreciate PortAventura for doing so. So if you want more details on that, you can find it there. We personally haven't written it, but Andre and Alex, our correspondents, have written it. And so I think as Sven and Emma, because they all went the week after we were in Spain. So they've all written it. Their reviews are online. So it looks cute from the outside. But no, if you come to the Far West, there's 2 great water rides. Grand Canyon Rapids is visually pretty cute.
Great. It was attractive, but it was.
I didn't hate it because I didn't get too wet on it. Yeah. I kind of like a good water ride. There was some speed to it. I felt like I was going really fast for Rapids Ride, which is just a Spanish thing, I guess, because Parker Warner's water Rapids Ride is also crazy fast. And I just thought it was visually pretty stunning. It had the old rock work, it was all in decent shape. I didn't mind not getting wet, but yeah, you are right. There wasn't a whole lot going on that ride.
I was much bigger fan of the log flume. It's one of the last,
Silver River?
if not the last. Yeah, Silver River was either one of the last or the last aerodynamics log flume. It's beautifully integrated with Tren de la Mina, and it's one of the only aero flumes I've ridden, if not the only aero flume I've ridden, that has 3 full drops. It's a very tall ride that's situated on a split level, so both the mine train and the log flume are benefactors of the topography in this area of the park. Originally, they were supposed to be in a covered, in a mountain of sorts, which would have been really cool, but I also, with them being outside, the sequences being outside, I'm kind of I like being able to see all of the aspects of the ride.
For sure, and it's honestly, that part of the park is very terrainy. There's a lot of height differentiation. So Silver River is this really cool, almost like terrain flume, where a lot of it happens, and then there's this giant drop at the very end, back towards lower up or lower down there. Mm-hmm. I really liked the differentiation of terrain there, and it's just a good flume. It's a really good flume for sure. And then there's Stampida, which I was expecting the worst, but honestly, I didn't hate Stampida. I call her dueling wagons because it's from the Universal era.
You go through a red-covered wagon or a blue-covered wagon
when you choose which station you want to go to.
So, dueling dragons.
So, that was really neat. And overall, it's not the greatest layout, but it is a very unique ride, the way that it races itself, and there's some good airtime, some good laterals. I didn't hate the trains. You gotta watch out. If you don't sit right, you can smash the hell out of your knees on the bare metal that's right in front of you. That's definitely the biggest downside. But other than that, it tracked pretty well. So I was, holding on pretty good and pushing myself into my seat. But I had mostly enjoyable rides. And I think we rode that at least 4 or 5 times. We were on Stampede a lot. And the line at night wasn't that bad for it.
Yeah. And then they also have Tomahawk, the little kiddie coaster
that we've
attached to it, which it's a miracle that we were able to fit. Like, we were squished into one of those little junior GCI trains. And it was like, I can't believe they were able to dispatch us. It was literally so uncomfortable, but it was also just hilarious that we were able to get on and ride.
And Tomahawk is a pretty cute ride.
It's a cute ride.
It's real good for a kiddie coaster. But yeah, I'll say Stampede was actually a highlight for me. We rode it quite a bit. It's one of those rides that has a presence. I kind of, that corner of the park kind of gave me Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 vibes. So there's all the theming for a Wild West area. And, there was the big, the 3 really Wild West wooden coasters. That just, it was a vibe. I actually really liked the Far West. I had a good time in that area. And then the way that's all connected to the hotel cluster with Hotel Gold River, Lucy's Mansion, and Colorado Creek, it made for a really impressive, complete land, if not the best, maybe like second best when it came to like overall appearance and how things were kept, in my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, and then from here you continue around. The River Rapids ride is actually pretty close to the entrance of the park. That's the first attraction.
Really close. You see it from the entrance.
When you enter the area and you see like the lagoon over the Mediterranean area, on top of the lagoon, like over the mesa, is where the Rapids ride is. So that brings your PortAventura World or your PortAventura amusement park experience full circle. But then there's still one more major theme park component to this experience, and that is Ferrari Land.
Before we move to Ferrari Land, I want to recap a little bit about PortAventura, the park itself. It's massive. It has great bones, great landscaping. Overall, it's one of those parks where if it was in the right hands, I think it has the potential to be like in the top 10, or top 5 of the world even. It has that potential.
Definitely.
I am sad that it's not operated by Universal anymore. We've all heard the rumors of it potentially returning to Universal. Be really great. Will it really happen? I don't know. We'll see. But that would be really great because I do feel like if it's in the right hands and it's being fixed up properly, this resort can really rival some of the big players like Europa Park, Disneyland Paris, Efteling, Phantasialand. Like, it really could be part of the top 5 European parks. Right now, because of the way it's operated and the shape that it's in, I just don't quite have the same feeling and love for the park. Despite, I did like our hotel stay. I will say the hotel was good. But we did stay arguably like in the top 2 nicest hotels. So we did, if you have the chance, Colorado Creek is very nice. Yeah, that's what I probably have to say about the park itself. I don't want to go too deep into the policies and the little things that were bothersome because, every park has its flaws. I think we laid in enough on that already.
Pretty well.
So let's head next door to Ferrari Land.
So Ferrari Land, which is an interesting choice, is like a second gate. It's definitely big enough to be. It's bigger than any of PortAventura's lands, I think, but it's still quite small compared to the other gate. There's a mix of attractions. There's nothing that really stands out
except for Red Forest. Except for Red Forest.
Red Forest, yeah. Red Forest is the one ride that stands out for sure. Lines at this place get crazy because attendance for its size is probably great for what it is, and then it's just packed with people trying to ride stuff. So
it's funny because it is an add-on.
And, everything is like an hour.
Like if you buy a resort stay, it comes with one evening or one afternoon at PortAventura. I mean, at Ferrari Land, and the rest is all PortAventura. Yeah, that's pretty interesting about it.
So they've got like the 2 indoor rides. They have a Back to the Future-esque motion simulator experience.
Or Simpsons for those.
Or Simpsons, using that kind of ride system, which was okay. It was just pretty.
That's
basic.
Racing Legends, a little basic. For us, you stand in the queue forever, and then you have like a half-broken pre-show where nothing works, and then you finally walk over to another pre-show where the screens aren't turned on. So it's like you're facing these screens, but
and then you walk over to an area that looks like backstage.
Yeah, it's just all really confusing, and then you ride, and it's like kind of like a simulator, which I did actually kind of like the ride. Yeah. I hate. And then in the same building, you have
Flying Dreams.
It's a flying theater, which is actually also pretty good. It's just practically just there's a Ferrari in front of you at all times, and it's just going to different landscapes. It's kind of like Soarin', but then with a Ferrari in the shot at all times, which is it was cute. But the pre-show wasn't working. None of it was working, which is kind of the frustrating part. You can spend so much time standing through these pre-shows that aren't actually working, and a theme park that opened in 2017 has expensive licensing, but all the money goes to the licensing and none of the money goes to the maintenance. It's kind of think like, well, wouldn't Ferrari, the license, come in and say like, fix this up? It doesn't look like our brand. It doesn't look high quality.
Yeah.
No, it appears that there is no such governing body. Like Warner Brothers will come in and say like, you got to repaint your DC themed roller coaster Six Flags, or they'll come into Universal and be like, the animatronic isn't working on this ride of Harry Potter. Get it fixed. That sort of governing body, or that sort of thread of another company with the licensing being at risk doesn't exist at PortAventura, because Ferrari is just honestly kind of in poor shape.
Yeah. They have 2 SNS towers that are themed to drive pistons that are like pretty basic and blasé, especially in a resort that also has Huracan Condor. They have a little car ride, like an aerodynamic style car ride. But it broke down a lot, and it always had a really long line because it's like the only standard family ride there. And then they have a little kiddie area in the infield of Red Force. And then there's Red Force, which we did the express pass to just get in, get out, get the credit. And it was a pretty good ride. The launch is a LSM launch, so it's a different kind of approach to the like Top Thrill Dragster King Ka style ride. It's definitely not as spectacular, but then being in Europe without anything else to really compare it to, style wise, it's probably quite impressive.
I will say Red Force I actually liked. I think, especially in retrospect, I really enjoyed that thing I was able to get to its speed using LSMs. It felt different. It was a punchy LSM that just went on forever. I was impressed, and then you get all the way up there, and you have this absolutely magnificent view of the Mediterranean Sea. It was gorgeous.
And
it was really
dispatches
enjoyable.
On Red Force were really good,
and dispatches were great. There was always trains launching.
Easy to film that ride
exactly.
because there was always a
platform to watch it. There's Junior Red Force below it, a mini roller coaster. And that was the vibe. Like the vibe was this giant roller coaster that is just looming over the resort, and in a really magnificent and significantly clean way, despite there being so many flaws up close in that resort. I feel like Red Force was just omnipresent in a great way. I really actually enjoyed that ride, off-ride and on-ride, quite a bit.
We rode it once, and then like the funny thing, you come into the brakes on that ride, and you hit the brakes, there's definitely like a jolt, like when you hit the brakes. And I remember feeling like I got like, I don't know, I felt like I got like a little headache from that. Just from as we were coming into the brakes. That was the one thing about the ride that I wasn't crazy about. But other than that, it was a really solid ride. And I was just grateful for how efficient it was, because this park simply could not afford for this ride to not be consistent, like a well-oiled machine 100% of the time. So,
well, yeah, Red Force just sells the tickets, really.
They got that part right. It was the most important part, and they got that part right.
And there's some other smaller attractions in the restaurants, but nothing really worth noting. But yeah, Ferryland, it's the nice thing is when you book a package at PortAventura, which I definitely recommend if you're going to go to PortAventura, don't make it a one-day thing. You'll be frustrated trying to get everything in. I really enjoyed having 4 days there. Even when it was really busy, you had to wait a couple hours for things. It just didn't feel like there was too much rush. The hotels are nice. The pools were nice. I enjoyed our included buffets that we did. It was overall, it was a good resort to take as a resort. I would not really recommend going there just as a one-day theme park situation. It's easy to get caught up in all the flaws when you just have 1 day trying to get it done. But if you have 4 days, will the flaws be obvious? Yes, but also there's less pressure. I really enjoyed having that time there. And Ferrariland being an extra evening of something to do, it's a nice add-on, but just don't go into it expecting a theme park. You go into it expecting, a couple more rides that you have added on to your ticket.
It's really a pavilion.
Yeah, really it is.
Charge extra for.
And so in my little podcast playbook here, I wrote down, talk about the biggest weaknesses. I think we discussed those plenty throughout the episode. Overall, encompassing statement I want to make about that is great bones, great history. The park has immense potential. It is a cool resort. I just don't feel like the quality of the new stuff is what it needs to be, and I don't feel like the resort is loved by its own management the way it should be. That's what I'm just going to say.
Yeah.
But I do want to finish the episodes with some of the strengths. I think some of the strengths include their coaster lineup. Of course, if you look at the European coaster lineup, both major Spanish parks have good lineups, and PortAventura is obviously no exception. Shambhala, amazing. Large, great roller coaster, good proportions. I think Red Force is awesome. Dragon Con, while absolutely not near my favorite, B&M, solid looper, runs well, which is nice. Not really any headbanging, like it runs pretty well.
Great Mine Train, great log
Mine
flume.
Train is incredible. Also log flume. I think Stampede and Tomahawk work. And drop tower wise, one of my favorite drop towers in the world is Willicon Condor. Looks great. So there is a lot to appreciate, and I appreciate the scope of the park. You can wander around aimlessly for a couple hours and not see the same thing twice because the park is so large. And again, thanks to what the Busch company, Anheuser-Busch, was putting in there, it really is a gorgeous park, kind of like the other Busch Gardens parks. It's sprawling, it's gorgeous. You don't have to ride anything to enjoy the scenery. That's something I enjoy at PortAventura. And it was a great resort.
Yeah.
Like, as a resort guest, I enjoyed popping in and out of the park.
Yeah, our pool
The
time.
hours were good. Like, it was open late, long days. Go, hang out all day, go to the pool, go to the buffet, whatever, and then go back to the park, ride some more things. Nighttime shows were good. Parade not included. That was awful. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed it from a resort guest aspect. The price was right. If you compare it to big American resorts like Universal, Orlando Resort, Walt Disney World, you're used to spending so much money for that it felt like a decent price to me, despite it being kind of expensive, I think, on the European scale still.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it. I don't have a whole lot to add other than that. I just love the glimmers. There's underneath all the BS, there's these glimmers of Busch Gardens and glimmers of like Alton Towers, like from its Tussauds era, and glimmers of Universal Creative. Like, there has been legendary hands on this project. There's fingerprints of great design and infrastructure in this place. I mean, the fact that you've had 3 different amazing theme park management operating companies working on this park just inside of 10 years. It has such a rich history, and I just wish that, I just wish things would shake up. I wish things would change. I wish it would go to a different management. I wish any of the previous managements that this park had would take over, or if a new management team came in, like Parques Reunidos would be awesome. Company des Alpes, like, I would think, sometimes the grass isn't always greener, but, it's been almost 20 years since the last management shakeup, and I just feel like surely they could do better. There's got to be a better governing opportunity for this resort than what's currently happening.
Efteling, if you're listening, you need another park.
What?
Said Efteling, if you're listening.
Oh,
you
yeah,
need another
please.
Park.
Oh, my God.
They know how to do the resort thing. They know operations. They're pretty good about that kind of stuff.
Phantasialand. Anybody, please.
That's funny.
Europa,
Universal,
I'm begging you. Like, somebody
back.
make this company an offer they can't refuse and put this place out of its misery.
Wow, that's so dark.
By elevating it deliver it from its misery. Don't kill it.
Elevates. And with that, we want to end our Inside PortAventura World episode. Make sure you listen to our previous episode of this season, which is the Velocicoaster versus Batman versus Tutatis versus Pantheon, in whichever order. That is our previous episode. That's the launch episode of this season. We've got a lot more of our Inside episodes coming up, including Parker Warner, King's Dominion, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, Moray Spears. We're going to do it all. That'll be this season. Follow us on Threads if you haven't yet, because, it's new. Instagram, YouTube, all of our vlogs, including our Spain vlogs, are on there. We've got our TikTok, Facebook, and, of course, thecoasterkings.com. And for now, I want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.